We have already purchased a fishing boat in Gaza. It's being renovated now into a cargo vessel.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 21 cable stations from Vermont to New York City and on the internet at thestruggle.org. We begin with some good news. Dr. Tariq Dugani and John Grayson have been freed from the Egyptian prison in which the regime has put them for over 50 days. You saw about their case in our last program. They received help from an awful lot of people, including a petition signed by 140,000 people. We begin our program in Boston at a rally against the Keystone XL pipeline. It's been a year now since Hurricane Sandy, and the United States and its corporations are continued to dig up every kind of fossil fuel they can find. The Keystone XL pipeline would bring down the dirtiest of the fuels, Canadian tar sands, through the United States. Then to interviews we did in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. campaign to end the Israeli occupation. First with Susan Schuurman, who's part of an effort to put billboards up, calling on people to oppose the $30 billion that is given to Israel in military aid. Then with Ann Wright, who was on the Gaza Freedom Flotilla and is now part of a new effort called Gaza's Ark. Finally, a note about Miko Peled, who will be speaking at Yale University. We begin between the Boston TD Garden and the Tip O'Neill Federal Building.
My name is Sam. I'm another angry father from Vermont. Stop the pipeline. Obama and Harris, stop the pipeline.
My name is Wendy. I'm a grandmother. I'm against the pipeline.
Obama and Harris, stop the pipeline. My name is Lago. I'm a teacher and a parent, and I'm against the pipeline.
Obama and Harris, stop the pipeline. For the air we breathe, and the water we drink, and the water we drink, and the whole planet, is on the brink, is on the brink. No KXL, 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 no KXL. President Obama, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? Secretary Kerry, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do?
And even though we blocked the door, the federal government doesn't feel comfortable arresting us. Isn't that interesting?
Next to Washington, D.C. for two interviews with activists who are in groups that are part of the U.S. campaign to end the Israeli occupation, a coalition of 400 U.S. groups. I'm speaking to Susan Schuurman, who's involved with a very interesting project, billboards to support Palestinian rights and oppose U.S. arms sales to Israel. Good morning.
Good morning.
Where are you from, Susan?
I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've been there about 20 years. I grew up in New Jersey, lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan for a while. Been in Albuquerque, been in New Mexico for 20 years now.
Why did you get interested in the Israeli-Palestinian issue?
Well, I've been interested in the issue probably since the 80s. I definitely grew up with the myth of a land for a people without a land. I was raised Protestant, and I guess I was raised to believe that 1948 was a miracle, surrounded by all those Arab enemies after the Holocaust, that the Jewish people could forge out their own country in Israel. But then I read an occasional paper written by an archaeology professor that presented a different narrative. There were two narratives in this occasional paper. That was the first time I got exposed to maybe what I believed wasn't the whole story. And over time I started to read and I got more educated. Then I was adopted and I found out I'm half Middle Eastern. I'm actually half Iranian Kurd, and that also triggered an interest in the region. And then I also went to Spain for a semester, and I was in Granada and in college, and that kind of piqued my interest in the whole Moorish influence of Spain. And then September 11 occurred. I was a producer in a newsroom in Albuquerque, and I was appalled at the ignorance about the Middle East in the newsroom, including my own. So I decided to go back to school and get a master's degree in the history of the Middle East. And after doing all that research, I finally felt confident to speak publicly on behalf of Palestine solidarity and Palestinian self-determination.
So the particular campaign you're involved with is arms deals to Israel. And what is the latest deal that our government is doing with Israel?
Well, under Bush, they renewed a 30-year commitment, a 10-year commitment to $30 billion. It's about $3 billion a year. And now under Obama, he's talking about raising that to $40 billion over 10 years, so about $4 billion a year. And that's just the minimum. There's actually a lot more that the U.S. gives Israel, but it's the easiest statistic to cite because it's so easy to research that, yes, there's a memorandum of understanding to sell Israel, to give Israel $30 billion in military aid, and then in turn they spend about 70% of that, 75% of that purchasing U.S. weapons.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about the campaign, the billboards.
Sure. The coalition has stopped $30 billion to Israel. We're based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Our website is www.stop30billion.org. And we've put up billboards in 10 cities, 14 different campaigns, 81 total billboards over the last 3 years. And it's attracted a very generous donor who wishes to remain anonymous, but we're offering matching grants of up to $5,000 per community if you're willing to put up a design that features an American flag and a message about ending aid to Israel. So we're really excited about this. I'm here at the U.S. Campaign National Conference hoping to recruit additional communities to take advantage of that offer, and we tell you how to do it. It's really easy.
Now, the first one you put up, there were some problems.
Yeah, our first one was in the spring of 2009, right after Operation Cast Lead. And it said, tell Congress, stop killing children. And it featured a picture of a Palestinian girl and an Israeli tank. And that caused a lot of controversy. And it was supposed to be a 2-month-long contract. And after 3 weeks, the company very abruptly took all our billboards down. We had like 20 billboards. And we, of course, cried censorship. And we got, national and in some cases international attention from the censorship. So they actually did us a favor. They refunded all of our money. The issue got a lot of exposure, and that attracted additional donations. And that happened one more other time. It also happened when we put up 24 billboards in Los Angeles. Those came down early as well. CBS.
And we should mention that Israel was killing lots of children at that point. This was Cast Lead, and something like 400 kids had died among 1,400 killed in Gaza in that massacre.
Right. So it was the truth, but some people can't hear the truth. And our Congress in particular seems, often it doesn't seem like they have the interests of the American people at heart when they're doing their votes. It seems like Israel has an awful lot of sway in Congress.
Yeah, and the 1% have their own priorities.
There you go.
And so these billboards are going up in various places, and the campaign mostly now says Congress spend the money at home. That's the main message.
Right. Tell Congress spend our money at home, not on the Israeli military. This past spring we had campaigns go up in 3 cities, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Helena, Montana, and the latest was Spokane, Washington. The billboard is actually right on the border with Idaho. And, there's the eyeballs that drive by and see it, but then there's also, if you snap a photograph of it and then you share it on social media, then exponentially more people see it and hear about it. And lately, we've been also benefiting from Stand With Us. Stand With Us has vowed, whenever they see one of our billboards go up, to put up a billboard of their own saying how great Israel is. And so that just gives us even more publicity, because usually the newspapers don't like to cover that we put up a billboard. They don't think that's news or newsworthy. But when Stand With Us also puts up a competing billboard, then they cover it as dueling billboards. That's a news story. So.
And there's also some on buses, right?
Yes, there have been some on buses in the Chicago area, which wasn't our campaign. We inspired a Chicago Be On Your Side, Two People's One Future campaign. And also they tried to do buses in Seattle, but that was censored, before they even went up. But we put up billboard bus ads in San Francisco.
Great. Well, thanks for talking to us.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. I totally support community media.
At the U.S. Campaign Organizers Conference, Ann Wright talked about Gaza's Ark.
We have already purchased a fishing boat in Gaza. It's being renovated now into a cargo vessel. And we're asking the international community to buy products from people in Gaza, handicrafts, food products. They're all listed on our website called gazasark.org. Buy those directly from the vendors, and they will consign them to the Gaza's Ark. And in the spring of next year, we will sail Gaza's Ark out of Gaza.
I'm speaking with Ann Wright, who is a former colonel in the U.S. military and a retired diplomat who left service after the start of the Gulf War, or in protest of its. Why don't you tell us?
Okay, yep. Well, I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel, and then I resigned from the U.S. State Department in 2003, 10 years ago, in opposition to the war on Iraq.
Okay, yeah, we got to keep our war straight. There's so many.
Too many of them, aren't there?
I've been trying to talk to you since March because it was a very interesting article you wrote on Counterpunch about the Mavi Marmara and the consequences. And I want to start with something that I found rather startling, that the president of Turkey met with the president of the United States and brought up a question about a U.S. citizen who had died on the Mavi Marmara, Furkan Doğan. A young man had been born in Troy, New York, and he died in those hails of bullets, and the U.S. has never said anything about it, the U.S. government. And he brought it up to the president, and what did the president do or say?
Well, the president reportedly just turned away from him. Furkan Doğan, as a 19-year-old, was killed by 5 bullets. He was really executed by the IDF. And the autopsy report shows that he was definitely executed, and with a shot straight through the head after he'd been kicked by IDF soldiers. So President Obama knew about it. I mean, all of this happened in 2010 after he had been elected as President of the United States. It was the decision of his administration not to have a U.S. investigation over the death of an American citizen and the kidnapping of 15 other American citizens, including myself. There's a little more to the story, too. The Turkish foreign minister came to the United States recently and met with Senator Kerry, or Secretary of State Kerry, and he brought with him Furkan Doğan's father. And so the father has now had a direct talk with the Secretary of State of the United States, which is something that had not happened before. Not to say that that has made this issue resolved in terms of the United States doing anything more for the Doğan family on an official investigation on IDF conduct. But it does show that the Turkish government is not letting this go away on one level. On another level, the Turkish government has started cooperating with the Israeli government and has told the Israeli government that this lawsuit that we have now against 4 IDF generals, that could go away if there are certain other things that happen in their bilateral relationship.
This is a lawsuit in Turkish courts.
In Turkish courts, yes. The 4th session of this court will be on October 10th. The first one started a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, in November of 2011. And in fact, I was a witness in that first court hearing where the 4 generals in absentia, because they're actually now kind of trapped in Israel because there's an arrest warrant out for them through Interpol. So they are kind of trapped there. If they leave Israel, then this warrant is out for them to appear in Turkish courts.
Now, there was some degree of settlement for the people who are the Turkish citizens who were killed. Is that right?
There's been an offer of settlement, but to my understanding, the people that were brutalized by the Israeli military and the families of those that were killed have not accepted any money from Israel. There's been an offer, but there's not been an acceptance.
What about for the injured? Is there some kind of offer there too?
No, to my knowledge, there's nothing for the injured, and there were a lot. There were over 50 people that were shot, and many of them seriously, including one man that has been in a coma for over 3 years. So those that have been wounded have not been compensated at all, and I don't think that they don't want money from the Israeli government on this. What they want is justice for the Palestinians.
For those who don't know anything about this, let's talk. What was the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, and you participated yourself?
Well, the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, which took place in May of 2010, was a follow-on to the Free Gaza Movement's, an organization that had taken 8 boats, or attempted to take 8 boats into Gaza to break the Israeli naval blockade of Gaza in 2008. And in fact, 5 of those boats actually got into Gaza. And it was the first time in 40 years that any outside naval traffic had gotten into Gaza. And they were greeted by tens of thousands of people of Gaza that came down to the port in Gaza City to see the first internationals arriving by sea. And the videos of this are just some of the most moving ones you've ever seen. Little kids jumping off the piers and jumping off the quay walls to jump in the water and swim over to the boats. And I mean, it was just a glorious, wonderful time. But then after the Israelis attacked Gaza in December of 2008 and January of 2009, the next 3 boats that attempted to go into Gaza were met with brute force. And in fact, the IDF naval forces rammed the boats. On one of the boats was a U.S. Congresswoman, Cynthia McKinney, and a Nobel Peace Laureate, Maureen Maguire, who both have chilling stories of seeing this IDF boat come and purposely crash into their boat and really attempt to sink it. So that was the follow-on from those one-at-a-time boats that went into Gaza was, why don't we have a flotilla? So the Free Gaza movement and got in touch with people in the Palestinian solidarity community all over the world to say, would you want to sponsor a boat in a flotilla? So by May of 2010, there were 7 boats that actually had been purchased and were ready to sail and sailed toward Gaza. I was on the Challenger 1 boat. I started out on Challenger 2. That one had navigation problems. It turned out that the Mossad had somehow tinkered around with the steering on both of the Challenger boats. They got one of them fixed, and I ended up going on that. And I had spent 3 days on the Marvi Marmara as it was waiting for all the boats together. So as the boats turned to go toward Gaza, our last group of internationals that were coming out of Cyprus, including some European parliamentarians who wanted to be on the big Marvi Marmara because there were parliamentarians from other countries of the world that were already on that. So I volunteered to go back down to the Challenger 1 and set off with them. And that Challenger 1 was just off to the port stern of the Marvi Marmara as the IDF attacked the Marvi Marmara. So I saw and heard the attack, the bullets that started flying, the helicopters that were coming over. And then our boat was, the captains of the boat started talking to each other on the radios, and the captain of the Marvi Marmara said, to our captain, why don't you speed ahead, because you're the smallest boat, the speediest boat, see if you can pull some of these IDF boats with you, because we're getting slammed with all these guys that are shooting at us. And so we took off, and our boat was boarded forcefully. We had people that were beaten up by the IDF. One was tasered. We had people that were hit in the face with paintballs. Fortunately, no bullets, but these paintballs can be lethal too if they hit you, in the right spot in the forehead.
And the IDF acted as if this was a military assault on them.
Yes.
Even though they knew full well that all the ships had been investigated for weapons and so on.
That's correct. They and that now that we know from some of the materials that have come out that they knew that this was an unarmed, and every ship had been checked and publicized that it had been checked by the customs officials of the country from each of the ship where each of the ships left. So they knew that there were no arms on those ships, but the decision was made by someone that they would apply lethal force from the very beginning on the Marvi Marmara. And indeed, the snipers were starting to shoot from the helicopters that were above it. And that's where Furkan Doğan was shot, along with several other people that were on the top of the Marvi Marmara. And then as the commandos landed, they came up onto the top and then in very close range executed him.
Just to finish this, what about the property, the boats themselves that had been impounded, all the computers that were taken, the money, the credit cards? Whatever happened with that?
Very little of that was ever returned to the passengers. Some of the suitcases, the suitcases themselves arrived back in Istanbul, but there was nothing in them. For the people that were on the Challenger 1, we received nothing back, nothing. And we still, through the State Department, we make complaints to the State Department saying, it's your buddy, Israel, they know where this stuff is. And we do know that credit cards had been used by IDF soldiers, and one soldier was court-martialed for selling some of the computers that they had taken from us. And hundreds of thousands of dollars were taken too, that were just stolen from passengers. People were carrying $10,000, $5,000 to give to various charities in Gaza once we got there. So there was a lot of cash that was there, and it was stolen.
Let's talk about current projects. Gaza Ark. Explain that.
Well, we've now had 3 different attempts. Besides the 2010 flotilla, we organized in 2011 another flotilla that actually had 10 ships, and only 3 of them ultimately got on the high seas to even challenge the naval blockade. Our U.S. boat to Gaza got 5 miles offshore of Greece before the Greek Coast Guard, on behalf of the Israeli government, stopped us and turned us back. Since we now had boats that are impounded either in Greece or in Israel, I mean, there's a whole flotilla that's in Israel, our boats that are in Israel. So that was a lot of money that the international community sunk into this project to get international attention to the Gaza flotilla. We've now kind of changed our ideas on, if you just keep sending ships that direction just doesn't make sense. So we decided that we would try to bring a ship out of Gaza. There are some fishing trawlers that are in Gaza, fishermen who have to stay very close to the shore of Gaza when they go fishing, because the Israelis will shoot them and impound their boats. But we were able to purchase a trawler, and we are renovating it into a cargo ship, and we're going to sail that ship out of Gaza probably next springtime. And on board that will be merchandise that we can purchase from vendors, from craftspeople in Gaza. The Palestinians, whether they're in the West Bank or in Gaza, are wonderful, wonderful craftspeople and seamstresses and embroiderers, and there are just some beautiful things that are still being made under such arduous circumstances in Gaza. So we, on our website, which is called gazasark.org, we have links to some of the organizations like the School for the Deaf, that has a beautiful array of embroidering materials and wooden boxes that one can purchase, and then links to organizations that have honey in little pots and dates and types of things that will survive a voyage. So we're asking the international community to go on our website and order through the website puts you into a link directly to those organizations in Gaza. We don't handle any of the money. You buy directly from the vendor and then put on there you want it consigned to Gaza's Ark and where you want it shipped. And so in next springtime, we'll ask all the vendors to bring, in a great ceremony, bring all of the things that have been purchased by the international community down to the Gaza City wharfs, and we will put it on board the the Gaza's Ark and attempt to sail it out.
Dumb question. The Israelis don't allow imports. They claim, well, it's going to be rifles and stuff. But what's their reason for denying the Gazans the right to export?
Well, tragically, it's meanness. It is a purposeful meanness. You know, even trying to export through the Eretz crossing or the Karim, the other crossing, the Israeli government is not allowing much merchandise or fruits or flowers to come out of there. Maybe 1/100th of what was being exported from Gaza in 2006 is now being allowed to be exported. And what's the rationale for that? It is a purposefully mean, nasty Israeli policy to try to just keep putting the screws to the people of Gaza.
Kind of collective punishment until they get them to bow down.
That's right. And while we anticipate that the Israeli naval boats will be out there to try to stop our boat and tow it into an Israeli port, we intend to follow up with legal proceedings in Israel. We'll use the lawfare as they are using in other ways. We'll use that too. And just as the Corey family has been trying to get justice for the murder of their daughter by an Israeli bulldozer, then we will try to get economic justice for the people of Gaza by going to court in Israel.
Well, I know we'll be following this story in the months ahead. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Stan.
Israeli activist Miko Peled is again speaking in Connecticut, first at the Tree of Life conferences, and then a special appearance at Yale University, October 28th. Here's a bit of a talk he gave last winter.
And the terrorizing of Palestinians at the Israeli airport. Israeli citizens who are Palestinians who want to go overseas, held for hours, interrogated, body searches, cavity searches, for hours, humiliated in front of everybody like this. Has nothing to do with safety. They want to keep one side afraid and one side always frustrated.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.